Dad said, "Your brother deserves the family business. You just don't have what it takes." I agreed completely. What I had instead was the patent rights to everything the business sold. Funny how quickly I developed what it takes. Hey Reddit. So my dad handed the family business to my golden child brother, saying I didn't have what it takes to run it. I agreed with him completely. What I had instead was every single patent for the products that made the business profitable. Turns out I had exactly what it takes. Here's how it went down. I'm 32, male, and for the past decade, I've been the product development engineer at my family's manufacturing company, Sterling Industrial Solutions. We make specialized industrial equipment, the kind of stuff that factories need but nobody thinks about. Conveyor belt components, automated sorting systems, custom fabrication tools. Not glamorous, but steady money. My dad built this company from scratch 40 years ago. Started in a garage with a single lathe and a dream. Worked his way up through 2 decades of grinding it out. Now we've got a 50,000 square foot facility in an industrial park outside Columbus, Ohio, 85 employees across 3 shifts, an annual revenue that used to hover around $4.5 million. Real American dream stuff. The kind of story Dad loved telling at Chamber of Commerce meetings and Rotary Club dinners. Except he's getting old now. Turned 68 last year, and his health started declining fast. Heart problems, high blood pressure, the works. Doctor told him to reduce stress or risk a serious cardiac event. Running a manufacturing company is basically nothing but stress, so something had to give. Enter my younger brother Cameron. He's 28, has a business degree from Ohio State, where he spent more time at networking events than in actual classes. And he's been groomed for leadership since the day he was born. Dad used to joke that Cameron came out of the womb wearing a tie and shaking hands. While I was in the workshop designing products and solving engineering problems, Cameron was at industry conferences shaking hands and learning to play golf. While I was covered in metal shavings testing prototypes, Cameron was having expensive dinners with clients and posting about it on LinkedIn. While I was pulling all-nighters to meet deadlines, Cameron was attending leadership seminars about synergy and paradigm shifts. The dynamic was clear from day one. I was the technical guy, the behind-the-scenes worker. Cameron was the face of the company, the future leader. Dad never explicitly said it, but you could see it in how he talked about us to other people. When someone asked about succession planning, he'd get this proud look and say, "Cameron's being groomed to take over. He's got the business mind for it." Me? I was our talented engineer, or the guy who makes the magic happen in the workshop. Never the heir apparent. Never the future of the company. Just the technical resource they couldn't quite figure out how to label. Dad loves Cameron. Always has. Cameron's got the charm, the social skills, the ability to walk into a room and make everyone think he's the smartest guy there, even when he doesn't understand the technical details. Meanwhile, I'm the guy in the back room covered in metal shavings, creating the actual products that keep the lights on. Here's the thing about manufacturing. Products don't design themselves. When I started working for Dad right out of engineering school 10 years ago, Sterling Industrial was struggling. We had maybe a dozen standard products, all copied from competitors with minor modifications. Nothing proprietary, nothing special, nothing that would make a client choose us over anyone else, except maybe being slightly cheaper. We were competing purely on price, which meant razor-thin margins and constant pressure. Dad would come back from sales meetings frustrated because clients kept asking if we could match competitor pricing. The answer was usually yes, but it meant cutting our profit to almost nothing. One bad quarter, and we'd be in serious trouble. I changed that. Over 10 years, I designed 47 different products and product improvements. Not just minor modifications or cosmetic changes, completely new systems that solved problems our clients didn't even know they had. Every single design came from my brain, my hands, my late nights in the workshop testing prototypes until they worked exactly right. Let me give you some examples of what I built. The RS7 automated sorting arm? That was mine, designed from scratch. I spent 3 weeks at a client's warehouse just watching their workers manually sort components for 8 hours straight. Watch them bend, lift, sort, stack, repeat. By the end of each shift, they were exhausted and making mistakes. I went back to the workshop and designed a pneumatic arm system with optical sensors that could identify component types and sort them automatically. Took me 4 months of prototyping, but when I finished, it cut their sorting time by 60% and reduced repetitive strain injuries by 80%. Became our best-selling product within 6 months, and we couldn't manufacture them fast enough. The modular conveyor junction system? Also mine. Designed it because clients kept asking for custom configurations, and our old system required complete redesigns for every installation. If they wanted to change the layout, they basically had to buy a whole new system. It was expensive, time-consuming, and clients hated it. My modular approach meant they could rearrange components like building blocks. Need to redirect a conveyor line? Just swap out the junction module. Need to add a new branch? Click in another component. Installation time dropped from days to hours, and clients could reconfigure their systems without calling us every time. The precision alignment tool for heavy machinery? That came from a client complaining that installing our equipment took 3 days because getting everything perfectly aligned was so tedious. I designed a laser-guided alignment system with real-time feedback, cut installation to 4 hours, and eliminated the need for specialized installation crews. The vibration dampening mount system? Designed it after visiting a factory where our equipment was causing resonance problems with their building structure. Took me 2 weeks of testing different materials and configurations, but I created a mount that absorbed 90% of operational vibration, solved their problem, and opened up a whole new market for installations in older buildings. The modular filter housing for industrial ventilation? Built it because clients kept asking for customized filtration solutions, but couldn't afford bespoke engineering every time. My design let them swap filter types without replacing the entire housing. Simple concept, but nobody else was doing it. I could go on. The quick change tooling system, the smart temperature monitoring array, the automatic lubrication system that extended equipment life by 40%, the emergency shutoff controller that met new safety regulations before they were even finalized. 47 products total. Every single one documented, prototyped, tested, and refined by me personally. I'd spend weeks or months on each design, testing every possible failure mode, refining every detail until it was exactly right. Dad would check in occasionally, ask how things were going, then wander off to talk to Cameron about sales numbers. And here's the part my family didn't pay attention to. I filed patents for all of them. Not under the company name, under my name. Every single one. See, when I started at Sterling Industrial fresh out of engineering school, Dad was too cheap to hire a patent attorney. I'd suggested it during my first month, mentioned that we should protect our intellectual property as we developed new products. Patents are expensive, he said, waving away the suggestion. Thousands of dollars per application, maintenance fees every few years, legal costs if someone challenges them. For a small business like ours, it's just not worth it. I tried explaining that patents could actually be valuable assets, that they could protect our competitive advantage and potentially generate licensing revenue. He just smiled that patient smile he uses when he thinks someone doesn't understand business. You're an engineer, not a businessman, he said. Trust me on this one. We'll keep our innovations as trade secrets. Works just fine. Except trade secrets only work if you can actually keep them secret. In manufacturing, once you sell a product to a client, they can reverse engineer it. Our competitors were already doing that with our designs, making cheap knockoffs that undercut our pricing. So I decided to handle it myself. I started filing patent applications on my own time, using my own money. Taught myself the process through online resources and patent office guides. It was tedious and complicated, but I'm good at following technical procedures. The first few applications were rough. I made mistakes on the claims, didn't format things properly, got rejections that I had to revise and resubmit. But I learned. By patent application number 5 or 6, I had the process down. Filing fees ran about $1,500 per patent for a small entity, plus another $3,000 to $5,000 if you wanted a patent attorney to review it. I couldn't afford the attorney review, so I just did everything myself and hoped for the best. Worked most of the time. Over 10 years, I probably spent $75,000 of my own money, filing and maintaining those patents. Money I could have spent on a house down payment, or a nicer car, or literally anything else. But I believed in protecting intellectual property, even if Dad didn't. And here's the crucial part. Dad knew about it the whole time. I didn't hide what I was doing. I'd mention it at family dinners when someone asked what I'd been working on. Oh, just filed another patent application for the new conveyor module. Should hear back in about 18 months. Dad would nod absently and change the subject. Mom would make some comment about me being so dedicated to my work. Cameron would look bored and check his phone. I even showed Dad approval letters when they arrived. Hey, check it out! Patent number 9,247,883 just got approved. That's the RS7 sorting arm. That's great, son, he'd say without really looking at the document. Keep up the good work. The technical stuff bored him. He was a big picture guy, interested in sales numbers and client relationships, not the minutia of patent law and intellectual property rights. If it didn't directly impact this quarter's revenue, He didn't care about it. Same with the employment contract I'd signed when I first started. Dad had used some template he found online, filled in the blanks with my salary and benefits information, printed it out, and had me sign it. 5 pages of basic legal boilerplate covering stuff like hours, vacation time, and basic responsibilities. I read through it carefully before signing. Engineers' habit of reading the whole manual before operating any equipment. Notice there was no intellectual property assignment clause. Nothing saying that inventions I created while employed belong to the company. Nothing about patent rights or trade secrets or any of that stuff. I pointed this out to Dad. Hey, this contract doesn't say anything about IP rights. Should we add a clause about that? He waved it off. We're family. We don't need that kind of thing. Everything you do for the company belongs to the company. That's just understood. Understood, but not documented. Not legally binding. Just an assumption. I figured it didn't matter at the time. This was the family business. My patents, Dad's business. Same thing, right? We'd all benefit together. The company would use my designs, make money, and eventually I'd probably take over, or at least become a partner. The patents were just a technicality, a way to protect our innovations from competitors. Never occurred to me that Dad would hand everything to Cameron and treat me like a disposable employee. That assumption lasted 10 years, right up until the afternoon Dad called a mandatory family meeting to announce his succession plan. Dad called a mandatory meeting at the house on a Sunday afternoon. The whole family showed up. Me, Cameron, Mom, even our cousin Blake who does sales. Dad stood at the head of the dining room table looking serious, the way he does when he's about to make a big decision. I'm stepping back from the business, he announced. Health issues, doctor's orders. You know the drill. Someone needs to take over as CEO. I already knew where this was going. Cameron sat up straighter, trying to look humble but clearly excited. I've thought about this carefully, Dad continued. Running a business requires leadership, client relationships, and strategic thinking. Engineering skills are important, but they're not enough. He looked right at me. You're a great engineer. Nobody disputes that. But you just don't have what it takes to run a company. You don't have the social skills, the business acumen, the vision to take Sterling Industrial to the next level. Cameron tried to look sympathetic. Mom nodded along like this made perfect sense. Cameron has been preparing for this role his entire career, Dad said. He understands the business side, knows all our major clients, and has the leadership qualities we need. So effective immediately, Cameron is the new CEO of Sterling Industrial Solutions. The room erupted in congratulations. Mom hugged Cameron. Blake shook his hand. Dad looked proud, like he'd just made the wisest decision of his life. I just sat there thinking about those 47 patents gathering dust in my file cabinet at home. Any objections? Dad asked, looking at me. None, I said. You're absolutely right. I don't have what it takes to run a company. He seemed surprised I agreed so easily. Good. Let him think I was accepting my place in the family hierarchy. Cameron launched into this speech about his vision for the company's future, expanding into new markets, improving client relationships, modernizing operations, leveraging synergies, optimizing value propositions. All buzzwords and no substance. He talked for 15 minutes without saying anything concrete about how he'd actually accomplish any of it. It was the kind of speech you'd hear at a business seminar from someone trying to sound important. Lots of gestures, lots of confidence, zero specific plans. He mentioned embracing disruptive innovation, without explaining what that meant for a company that makes conveyor parts. He talked about building strategic partnerships, without naming any potential partners. He promised to revolutionize our market segment without specifying how. I watched Dad and Mom nodding along like he was delivering the Gettysburg Address. Blake looked appropriately impressed. Everyone was buying into the performance because Cameron had always been good at performances. What about the engineering side? I asked when he finally stopped talking. Cameron turned to me with his practiced smile, the one he uses on difficult clients. That's where you come in, brother. You'll continue doing what you do best, designing products. I'll handle the business strategy, client relations, market expansion, all the executive level stuff. So nothing changes for me? Exactly. You keep innovating, I keep us growing. Perfect division of labor. We both play to our strengths. Sounds perfect, I said. Mom looked relieved that I wasn't making a scene. Dad seemed satisfied that I knew my place and wasn't going to cause problems. Cameron looked like he just won the lottery without having to split the winnings. I drove home that night and pulled out my patent file. 47 patents, all approved by the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, all listing me as the inventor and patent holder. I'd even paid the maintenance fees religiously every few years to keep them active. Those fees weren't cheap, $1,600 per patent, at the 3.5-year mark, $3,600 at 7.5 years, $7,400 at 11.5 years. I was thousands of dollars deep in keeping these patents alive. Spent the whole weekend reviewing patent law and licensing agreements on legal information websites. Turns out, when you own a patent, you own the exclusive right to make, use, and sell that invention. Nobody else can manufacture or sell your patented product without your permission. That permission usually comes in the form of a licensing agreement, where they pay you for the right to use your invention. And Sterling Industrial Solutions had been manufacturing and selling my patented products for a decade without a licensing agreement, because I'd never thought I needed one, because it was family, because I assumed we were all on the same team. Assumptions make you vulnerable. Monday morning, I showed up to work like normal. Cameron was already in Dad's old office, making it his own. He'd brought in an interior designer over the weekend to redecorate. Gone was Dad's functional workspace with a metal desk and file cabinets. Now it was all modern furniture, a glass desk, motivational posters about leadership, and this expensive espresso machine that probably cost more than my monthly salary. He'd hung his business school diploma on the wall in a fancy frame, right next to a photo of himself shaking hands with some minor local politician at a Chamber of Commerce event. The bookshelf was full of business books with titles like The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and Good to Great that looked like they'd never been opened. His assistant, he'd hired an assistant his first day as CEO, was already scheduling meetings with all our major clients. He was planning a tour to introduce himself as the new leadership, shake hands, reassure everyone that Sterling Industrial was in good hands. I went to the workshop and started my real work, documenting everything, every product we currently manufactured, cross-referenced with my patent numbers, every client order and what products they were buying, every contract and what intellectual property it involved, every piece of equipment on the production floor, and what patented designs it was being used to manufacture. Took me 3 days to compile everything, but when I finished, I had a clear picture. 78% of Sterling Industrial's revenue came from products I designed and patented. The RS7 sorting arm alone accounted for 35% of annual sales. We sold about 200 units per year at $7,500 each. The modular conveyor system was another 20%. Major installations running $50,000 to $200,000. The rest was spread across various smaller products and custom installations. That old generic stuff Dad had been selling when I started barely moved anymore. Maybe 15% of revenue, and those margins were terrible because we were competing on price against overseas manufacturers. Clients wanted the new technology, the innovative solutions, the products that actually solved their problems instead of just being cheap commodity items. Sterling Industrial had transformed from a commodity manufacturer into an innovation company. And that innovation was sitting in my file cabinet in the form of 47 government-approved patents. I also started making calls. Reached out to the head engineer at Bartlett Manufacturing, our biggest competitor. Just casual conversation, asking how things were going in the industry. Mentioned I might be looking for new opportunities. Really, he said, clearly interested. Because we've been trying to figure out how Sterling keeps undercutting us on price with better technology. If you're available, we should talk. Made similar calls to 3 other competitors. All of them knew my work, knew my reputation, knew that I was the brains behind Sterling's product line. By Wednesday, I had a clearer picture. Cameron was spending his first week as CEO visiting clients, talking about maintaining relationships and ensuring continuity. He'd taken Blake with him for most meetings, which made sense. Blake actually knew the clients and could smooth over any awkward moments. Meanwhile, the production floor was running on autopilot. Orders were being filled, products were being assembled, everything looked fine on the surface. Cameron called an all-hands meeting Friday afternoon, gathered everyone in the warehouse, stood on a forklift so everyone could see him, and gave this speech about his vision for Sterling Industrial Solutions. We're not just a manufacturing company, he declared. We're a solutions provider. We're going to focus on customer experience, on building relationships, on being the kind of partner our clients can rely on. The warehouse guys looked confused. They were already building the products clients relied on. That's literally what manufacturing is. I know change can be difficult, Cameron continued, but I promise you, with the right leadership and the right strategy, Sterling Industrial is going to reach heights we never imagined possible. Someone asked about the engineering pipeline. Did we have new products in development? That's a great question, Cameron said, looking directly at me. Our engineering team, led by my brother, continues to do excellent work developing innovative solutions. Right? Right, I agreed. Didn't mention that the engineering team consisted of me and two junior technicians, who mostly handled testing. After the meeting, Cameron pulled me aside. Listen, I know this transition might feel weird for you, but Dad made the right call. You're brilliant at engineering, but running a company requires different skills. I know, I said. That's why I'm not running the company. Exactly. So let's work together, okay? You handle the technical stuff, I'll handle the business side, and we'll both benefit. Sounds like a plan. He seemed satisfied. Probably thought I'd accepted my role as the technical guy who stays in his lane. That night, I drafted a licensing agreement. Professional, straightforward, completely reasonable. Sterling Industrial Solutions could continue manufacturing and selling products covered by my patents in exchange for a licensing fee of 12% of gross revenue from those products. 12% was industry standard. Not excessive, not punitive, just normal business practice for patent licensing. Included a clause allowing them to negotiate modifications or alternative arrangements within 30 days. Monday morning, I had the document notarized and certified. Sent copies via certified mail to Cameron at the office, to Dad at home, and to our company attorney. Then I waited. The explosion came on Wednesday. Cameron burst into the workshop around 10 a.m., waving the licensing agreement like it was on fire. His face was red, that vein in his forehead throbbing the way it does when he's really mad. "What the heck is this?" he demanded. "A licensing agreement," I said calmly. "For my patents." "Your patents? These are company products. Products I designed and patented under my name. Check the USPTO records if you don't believe me." He stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "You can't be serious. You work here. Everything you design belongs to the company. Not according to the patent applications I filed and paid for myself. Not according to the employment contract I signed, which has no intellectual property assignment clause. Want to see it?" I pulled out my employment file. Sure enough, the contract Dad had me sign 10 years ago was bare bones. Salary, benefits, basic responsibilities. Nothing about intellectual property rights, nothing about inventions or patents belonging to the company. Dad had been too cheap to hire a real business attorney when he brought me on board. Just used some template he found online and filled in the blanks. Cameron's hands were shaking now. Dad's going to hear about this. He already has. I sent him a copy via certified mail. Should have arrived yesterday. This is extortion. This is business. I own patents, you want to use them, standard practice is a licensing agreement. 12% of gross revenue is completely reasonable. 12%? Do you have any idea what that would do to our margins? Actually, I did. I'd run the numbers multiple times. 12% would cut into profits, but wouldn't kill them. Sterling Industrial would still be profitable, just less so. They'd have to actually manage the business efficiently, instead of coasting on my innovations. Then maybe you should negotiate a better rate, I suggested. That's why there's a 30-day window in the agreement. Or we could just fire you and stop making your products. You could try that, I agreed. Of course, those products account for about 78% of your revenue, so you'd be firing me and losing most of your income stream. But hey, you're the CEO now. Make whatever decision you think is best. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. The gears were turning, but not fast enough. "I need to talk to Dad," he finally said, and stormed out. 2 hours later, Dad showed up. He looked older than I remembered, more tired. The health issues weren't just an excuse. He genuinely wasn't doing well. We sat down in the break room, just the two of us. "What's this about, son?" he asked quietly. "Exactly what it says. I own patents for the products Sterling Industrial manufactures. I'm requesting a licensing agreement. But you developed those products for the company." "I developed them while working for the company," I corrected. "But I filed and paid for the patents myself. You knew about it at the time. Remember all those patent applications I mentioned at dinner?" He waved his hand dismissively. "I thought that was just paperwork. Technical stuff." "It was technical stuff. Technical stuff that gives me legal ownership of those inventions." Dad looked genuinely confused. "Why would you do this? We're family. Family that just told me I don't have what it takes to help run the company I basically rebuilt. Family that gave everything to Cameron while treating me like an employee." "You are an employee," he said. "A valued one, but still an employee." "Exactly. So treat me like one. Employees with patents license them. That's how this works." Dad rubbed his temples. "How much are we talking about?" 12% of gross revenue from patented products. Works out to about 9% of total company revenue, give or take. That's insane. We can't afford that. Sure you can. You just can't afford to keep paying Cameron a CEO salary and donating fancy client dinners and upgrading the office furniture. But the business itself? It'll be fine. You're trying to punish us for giving the company to Cameron. I'm trying to get fair compensation for my intellectual property. If you'd rather stop making my products, that's your choice. Fire me, erase me from the company history, do whatever you want. But you don't get to use my patents without paying for them. We sat in silence for a long minute. Let me talk to our attorney, Dad finally said. See what our options are. You've got 30 days, I reminded him. After that, I start enforcing my patent rights more aggressively. He left looking older than when he'd arrived. The next week was tense. Cameron avoided me completely. Dad started showing up to the office more often, meeting with the company attorney behind closed doors. Blake approached me once, asking if I was really serious about this. Dead serious, I told him. But it's the family business. Then the family should have treated me like family instead of cheap labor. Meanwhile, I'd been having conversations with Bartlett Manufacturing. They were very interested in my work, very impressed by my patent portfolio, and very willing to discuss employment opportunities. We've been watching Sterling's product line for years, their CEO told me during a phone call. We knew someone over there was designing brilliant stuff, didn't realize it was all one person. It was, I confirmed. If you were to join Bartlett, would you be able to bring those innovations with you? Depends. I own the patents, so I can license them to whoever I want. But I'd need the right offer. What kind of offer are we talking about? I laid it out. Base salary 40% higher than what Sterling was paying me. Full benefits, equity stake in the company, and complete creative control over the engineering department. That's aggressive, he said. So is my patent portfolio. Let me talk to the board. I'll get back to you by end of week. They got back to me in 2 days with a written offer. Everything I'd asked for, plus a signing bonus that was more than I'd made in the past year at Sterling. I didn't sign it immediately, kept it in my desk drawer as insurance. Day 25 of my 30-day deadline, Cameron finally showed up in the workshop. We're not paying you licensing fees, he announced. Our attorney says we can fight this, says there's precedent for employee inventions belonging to the company even without explicit contracts. Your attorney is wrong, I said calmly. But go ahead and try. I'll see you in court. You don't have money for a patent lawsuit? Actually, I do. Bartlett Manufacturing offered to cover my legal costs in exchange for exclusive licensing rights to my patents. Want to see the offer letter? His face went pale. You wouldn't. Try me. Right now, you have the option to keep using my patents for 12% of gross revenue. You try to fight me in court, lose, and I'll license everything to Bartlett. They'll have exclusive rights to manufacture every product that made Sterling Industrial relevant. You'll be back to selling the same generic knockoffs Dad was making 10 years ago. You'd destroy the company Dad built? Dad destroyed his own company when he decided his favorite son deserved to run it, despite having no idea how anything actually works. I'm just claiming what's mine. Cameron stood there for a long moment. I could see him trying to figure out an angle, some way to salvage this situation. He was a negotiator, a relationship builder. He was used to charming his way through problems. But this wasn't a problem you could charm your way out of. I need to talk to Dad, he finally said. You've got 5 days. He left without another word. 3 days later, I got a call from the company attorney. He wanted to meet to discuss terms. Not fight the patents, not argue about ownership. Discuss licensing terms. That was a good sign. It meant they'd actually looked into the situation and realized they didn't have a leg to stand on. We met at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory. He was a middle-aged guy named Patterson, maybe 55, wearing an expensive suit that probably cost more than I made in a week. He looked tired and annoyed, like this was the last place he wanted to be on a Thursday afternoon. Your patents are valid, he said, without preamble. I had an outside firm review them. Everything's properly filed, properly maintained. Sterling Industrial has been manufacturing patented products without licensing rights for a decade. I know. Your father had no idea what he was agreeing to when you filed those patents. My father had no idea about a lot of things. That's not my problem. 12% is too high. Industry standard for patent licensing typically runs between 5 and 8%. Industry standard assumes proper contracts exist. Your client didn't have those. So we're operating under the reality that they've been using my patents without permission for 10 years. Are you claiming damages for past use? I hadn't thought about that angle. Should I be? We could calculate back licensing fees if you want. He held up a hand. Let's focus on an ongoing agreement. The past would end up in court for years. We went back and forth. He tried 5%. I laughed and reminded him Bartlett's offer was worth more. He countered at 7. I held firm at 12. This is about family dynamics, not business, he finally said. Wrong. I'm a patent holder. They're manufacturing my inventions. I want fair compensation. That's business. You're going to destroy your relationship with your family over money. My family destroyed our relationship when they made it clear I'm just an employee. After another hour of negotiation, we agreed on 10% of gross revenue from patented products, 5-year contract with renegotiation options, quarterly payments starting within 30 days. Your father's not happy about this, Patterson mentioned. I imagine not. Your brother's furious. Cameron doesn't take things well. That's why he shouldn't be running a manufacturing company. This will cause permanent damage to those relationships. Those relationships were already damaged. I just didn't realize it until they made their priorities crystal clear. The attorney had the licensing agreement drawn up by the next day. Professional, binding, exactly what we discussed. I signed it. Cameron signed it, looking like he wanted to stab me with the pen. Dad signed it without making eye contact. And just like that, I went from employee to patent holder with a licensing agreement worth roughly $350,000 annually. The first check arrived 6 weeks later, covered the previous quarter plus back payments for the past 3 months since I'd sent the original licensing notice. Watching that deposit hit my account was better than any promotion or raise I'd ever gotten at Sterling. Cameron tried to cut me out of decision-making after that. Stopped including me in meetings, stopped asking for my input on client issues, basically treated me like a contractor who happened to work in the building. Fine by me. I showed up, did my engineering work, collected my salary plus licensing fees, and started planning my exit strategy. See, the thing about patent licensing is that I could license those patents to multiple companies if I wanted. Nothing in my agreement with Sterling gave them exclusive rights. They just got first access because they'd been using my designs already. 6 months after the licensing agreement went into effect, I signed a deal with Bartlett Manufacturing. Non-exclusive license for 15% of their gross revenue from my patented products, plus the job offer I'd been sitting on. They were expanding into new markets and wanted my innovations to give them a competitive edge. That meant I was now getting licensing fees from 2 companies. Sterling Industrial's $350,000 annually, plus Bartlett's estimated $280,000 based on their projected sales. I put in my 2 weeks' notice at Sterling on a Monday morning. Cameron was in his office when I dropped the resignation letter on his desk. He read it twice, then looked up at me with pure hatred. You're going to Bartlett. I am. You're giving our competitor access to our products. I'm giving a competitor access to my products. There's a difference. Dad's going to be devastated. Dad had a decade to treat me like I mattered. He chose not to. Now he gets to live with that choice. We made you who you are. No, I made me who I am. You just took credit for it. I walked out of his office, finished my 2 weeks doing minimal work, and started at Bartlett the following Monday. The transition was seamless. I already knew the products inside and out. Bartlett's engineering team was competent and eager to learn. Within 3 months, we'd adapted my designs for their production line and started taking market share from Sterling Industrial. Turns out, when you have the same innovative products but better management and customer service, clients switch pretty quickly. Sterling's revenue dropped 15% in the first quarter after I left, dropped another 12% the quarter after that. Some of it was market forces, but a lot of it was clients realizing they could get the same products from Bartlett with better support. Cameron tried to hire replacement engineers. Went through 3 and 6 months. None of them could replicate my work because you can't replicate something when you don't understand the underlying principles. They could copy my existing designs, but they couldn't innovate new ones. I kept getting my licensing checks from Sterling quarterly, like clockwork. Watched them get smaller as their revenue declined, but that was their problem to solve. Meanwhile, Bartlett was thriving. We'd expanded into 3 new markets using modified versions of my original designs. The CEO started talking about taking the company public within 5 years. My equity stake was looking very valuable. About a year after I left Sterling, Dad called me for the first time since I'd signed the licensing agreement. His voice sounded weak, older. Can we meet? He asked. I don't think that's a good idea. Please, I need to talk to you. We met at the same coffee shop where I'd negotiated the licensing agreement. He looked terrible, thin, pale, like he'd aged 10 years in 12 months. The business is struggling, he said without preamble. I'm aware. Cameron's trying his best, but he doesn't have your technical knowledge. We can't compete without new products. Should have thought of that before handing everything to him. I made a mistake, Dad admitted. I thought leadership skills mattered more than technical expertise. I was wrong. Yes, you were. Come back. Help us fix this. Come. I'll give you whatever you want. Title, salary, equity stake. You'll give me what I built in the first place? How generous. He looked down at his hands. I know I hurt you. I know I chose Cameron over you. But it's still the family business. It's your business, I corrected. I built my own. Bartlett isn't yours. No, but my patents are. My reputation is. My skills are. Everything that matters is mine. You just have a building and some equipment. Please don't let everything I built fall apart. Everything you built was already falling apart before I showed up. I saved it once. Not doing it again. Dad started crying. Actual tears running down his face. It should have felt satisfying, seeing him broken like this. Instead, it just felt empty. I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm sorry I didn't see how much you contributed. I'm sorry I always favored Cameron. I'm sorry I made you feel like you didn't matter. I appreciate the apology, I said, but it doesn't change anything. What can I do to make this right? Nothing. There's nothing you can do. Some bridges, once burned, don't get rebuilt. I left him sitting there and never looked back. Sterling Industrial Solutions filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy 18 months after I left. They couldn't compete without innovation, couldn't afford my licensing fees on declining revenue, and couldn't find engineers willing to work for Cameron's management style. The company got bought out by a private equity firm for parts. They kept some of the equipment, fired most of the staff, and dissolved the Sterling name entirely. Dad's life's work, gone. Cameron tried to get a job at other manufacturing companies. Turns out, being the CEO who drove a profitable company into bankruptcy doesn't look great on a resume. Last I heard, he was working in sales for an industrial supply company, making a fraction of what he'd been making as CEO. Blake landed on his feet. Good sales guys always do. He called me once to apologize for not speaking up during the succession announcement. Said he knew it was wrong, but didn't feel like it was his place to interfere. I told him I understood. He was just trying to survive in a dysfunctional family business like the rest of us. Mom tried to guilt me a few times, called me selfish, said I destroyed the family over money, claimed I should have been the bigger person. I stopped taking her calls after the third message. The thing about being the bigger person is that it only works if the other people involved eventually grow to meet you. My family wasn't growing. They were just expecting me to shrink. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.